For 30 magical years, Johnny Carson was the undisputed and beloved king of late night, a masterful host who made television's toughest job look completely effortless. Yet behind that charm was a code of loyalty as cold and hard as steel, and the penalty for breaking it was absolute banishment, a devastating price paid most famously by his greatest discovery, Joan Rivers, our first star on the list of celebrities he despised most. Number 1. Joan Rivers, the ultimate betrayal. Of all the stars Johnny Carson launched, none flew higher or closer to his flame than Joan Rivers. She was more than a guest. She was his comedic soulmate and greatest discovery. It was Carson who, in 1965, looked a struggling Joan in the eye and uttered the 5 words that changed her life forever. "You're going to be a star." With his blessing, she was crowned the queen of The Tonight Show, a bond that seemed utterly unbreakable. Throughout the 70s and early 80s, Joan became a fixture on the show, eventually being named the permanent guest host, the only person Carson trusted with his desk. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, a perfectly timed dance of wit and laughter that audiences adored. Joan's loyalty to Johnny was absolute. She turned down countless lucrative offers out of respect for her mentor. In her eyes, she was family, the natural heir to the late-night throne. But behind the scenes, the foundation of their kingdom was beginning to crack. In the mid-80s, rumors of Carson's potential retirement began to swirl, and NBC executives quietly drew up a secret list of 10 possible successors. When Joan eventually got her hands on that list, she was met with a cold, shocking reality. Her name, the name of his most popular and loyal substitute, was nowhere to be found. It was then that the upstart Fox network came calling with a bombshell offer. A chance for Joan to host her own competing late-night show. This wasn't just a job. It was a history-making, multi-million-dollar opportunity that would make her the first woman to ever break into the boys' club of late night. She was faced with an agonizing decision: remain the loyal number 2 in a kingdom that might never be hers, or build her own empire. After signing the deal, Joan retold she made the most dreaded call of her life to tell her mentor the news. But the voice on the other end wasn't angry or disappointed. It was something far worse. Pure, ice-cold silence. After she explained, Carson simply hung up on the phone. Thinking they'd been disconnected, a frantic Joan called back immediately. Johnny picked up, said nothing, and hung up on her a second time. Carson's retaliation was immediate, brutal, and public. He banned her for life from The Tonight Show, and in a masterstroke of manipulation, he told the press he only found out about her new show from a news release. He painted his greatest discovery as a disloyal, ungrateful backstabber. The message to the rest of Hollywood was clear: if you side with her, you were against me. The cost of crossing the king was devastating. Top celebrities, terrified of being blacklisted by Johnny, refused to appear on her show. The immense pressure strained her marriage to her producer, Edgar Rosenberg, who clashed with network executives. After her show was ultimately canceled, a distraught Edgar tragically took his own life, a heartbreaking final chapter in a story that all began with a silent, devastating hang-up. Number 2. Wayne Newton, the public humiliation. As Mr. Las Vegas, Wayne Newton was the embodiment of Sin City showmanship and a frequent, friendly guest on The Tonight Show in its early years. He and Johnny appeared to have a warm and respectful relationship, 2 icons of American entertainment sharing laughs and stories. But one day, for reasons Newton never understood, the friendship vanished, and the king of late night turned on the king of Vegas with a vengeance. Without warning, Carson began a relentless campaign of public humiliation during his opening monologues. Night after night, he targeted Newton with cruel, personal, and deeply cutting jokes about his masculinity, his voice, and his polished appearance. The jabs were not the good-natured ribbing Carson was famous for. They were mean-spirited attacks designed to mock and diminish him in front of millions of viewers. Johnny's monologues were the most watched minutes in television, and his jokes quickly created a toxic snowball effect. Other comedians, seeing that Newton was fair game, began repeating and embellishing the same cruel punchlines. Soon, Wayne Newton's carefully crafted image was replaced by a national caricature, a running gag created and sanctioned by the most powerful man on television. For over a year and a half, a confused and hurt Newton desperately tried to find out what he had done wrong. He called Carson's office repeatedly, he had his agents reach out, and he even pleaded with mutual friends to broker a peace treaty or at least get an explanation. Every attempt was met with a wall of silence. Carson refused to take his calls, all while the nightly mockery continued. Finally, Newton realized that polite phone calls would not stop the bullying. Raised in a tough environment and not one to be pushed around, he decided that if Carson wouldn't speak to him like a man, he would have to confront him like one. He flew to Burbank with a singular purpose: to end the humiliation one way or another. In a move that has become a Hollywood legend, Wayne Newton stormed into the NBC studios, bypassed security, and burst into Johnny Carson's private office. He got in the host's face and delivered a chilling ultimatum. Stop the jokes immediately, or, in Newton's words, he'll knock him on his ass. Stunned, Carson agreed. From that day forward, Johnny Carson never mentioned Wayne Newton's name in a monologue again. Number 3. Frank Sinatra, The Clash of Titans. The relationship between Johnny Carson and Frank Sinatra was a delicate truce between the undisputed kings of their respective domains. Carson ruled television, and Sinatra ruled the world of music and Vegas nightlife. They moved in the same powerful circles and maintained a public friendship, but behind the curtains, their colossal egos were on a collision course, destined to clash over power and professionalism. Carson's view of Sinatra's world was forever tainted by his own disastrous business deal as a part owner of the Aladdin Casino. The venture entangled him with mob-connected figures, and he even received credible death threats, forcing him to pull out. This dark experience left him with a deep resentment for the Vegas underbelly that Sinatra so effortlessly commanded, creating a silent tension between the two men. This tension often boiled over due to Sinatra's A-list demands. While other stars gladly sat on the couch for a full interview, Sinatra would often insist on special treatment, agreeing only to a brief walk-on appearance. To a meticulous host like Carson, who prepared for every guest, this was the ultimate sign of disrespect, a signal that Sinatra considered himself above the format of the show itself. The final straw was Sinatra's perceived lack of professionalism. On more than one occasion, he was booked as the show's lead guest only to cancel at the last minute, leaving Carson's producers in a desperate scramble. For a perfectionist like Johnny, who believed the show must go on, this was an unforgivable sin. It cemented a private, simmering resentment for Sinatra that lasted for years. Number 4. Bob Hope, the annoying legend. To the average viewer, comedy legend Bob Hope seemed to be one of Johnny Carson's absolute favorite guests. He was one of the show's most frequent guests, with the band always kicking into "Thanks for the Memory" as the aging icon walked out to thunderous applause. On the surface, it looked like two old friends and NBC titans sharing the stage, a comforting and familiar sight for millions. But in reality, Carson privately couldn't stand Hope's comedic style. He found his rigid, perfectly rehearsed jokes and stale, pre-written banter to be painfully outdated and stiff. Carson thrived on spontaneity and genuine conversation, but an interview with Hope was a frustrating exercise in sticking to the cue cards. It was the complete opposite of the effortless magic Johnny worked to create every night. The problem was, Carson had no choice in the matter. Bob Hope was an NBC institution, a golden goose from the network's early days. As part of Hope's contract, he had the guaranteed right to appear on The Tonight Show whenever he had a new special to promote. A resigned Carson would see the booking and privately sigh to his producers, "God, not again," but he was powerless to turn the legend away. The awkwardness peaked in one bizarre, now legendary incident. After Carson delivered a masterful monologue that had the audience roaring, Hope leaned over during a commercial break and asked if he could borrow some of the laughter for his own upcoming laugh-track-heavy special. A stunned Carson agreed, only to be watching Hope's show a few weeks later and distinctly hear Ed McMahon's signature cackle dubbed in over one of Hope's punchlines. Number 5. Gore Vidal, the intellectual enemy. Not all of Carson's feuds were about showbiz ego. His disdain for the controversial author and intellectual Gore Vidal was deeply personal and political. Vidal was a frequent guest, not because they were friends, but because their on-air clashes were captivating television. Vidal was everything Carson wasn't, an East Coast intellectual who loved to provoke. clashing with Carson's more controlled, Midwestern sensibility. Their interviews were less like friendly chats and more like verbal boxing matches broadcast live across America. Vidal would intentionally make inflammatory statements about politics, war, and religion, knowing it would push Carson into deeply uncomfortable territory. You could see the visible tension in Johnny's face as he struggled to maintain control of his show, while Vidal lobbed intellectual grenades from the guest chair. A significant source of the tension was Vidal's complicated family ties to the Kennedys and his very public, bitter feud with Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. Carson, who deeply admired the Kennedy family, often found himself in the awkward position of mediating on-air arguments and listening to attacks he found personally offensive. For Carson, Vidal's commentary often crossed the line from intellectual debate to personal insult. The professional discomfort turned to genuine hatred during Vidal's infamous libel lawsuit against fellow author Truman Capote. In a stunning legal move, Vidal's lawyers attempted to subpoena Johnny Carson and force him to testify about things that were said on his show. This was the ultimate betrayal for Carson, who valued his privacy above all else. Dragging him into a messy public lawsuit cemented his deep and lasting contempt for Vidal. Conclusion: The King's Legacy. Johnny Carson's personality was a study in contrasts. To his small, trusted inner circle, he was a fiercely loyal and generous friend for life. But for anyone who he felt had betrayed him, challenged his authority, or disrespected his show, his judgment was swift, silent, and absolute. He was a master of the grudge, holding on to his resentments with an icy resolve until the day he died. For 30 years, Carson wasn't just a host. He was the ultimate gatekeeper of fame in America. An invitation to his couch could launch a career overnight. But ending up on his bad side could mean the end of the line. His personal biases and secret grudges quietly shaped the landscape of comedy and entertainment for an entire generation, proving that his power extended far beyond the camera's glare. The most chilling proof of his cold resolve came during his final week on the air. As he celebrated his 30-year legacy, he paid tribute to friends, mentors, and favorite guests. But in all those retrospectives and farewells, he never once uttered the name of his greatest protégé, Joan Rivers. In his kingdom, her betrayal meant she was to be erased from history itself. Whose fallout with Johnny do you find the most shocking? Was his cold shoulder to Joan justified, or was his grudge against Wayne Newton the cruelest? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more dark secrets from Hollywood's golden age. If you want to keep watching, click one of the videos on the screen. We're sure you'll love them.